Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site, covering, of course, your Arizona Cardinals. This episode 592. This is a solo show. Seth is unable to join me on this one. This is our Week 3 Cardinals-Lions preview, picks, and predictions and props. Today is a solo show. Bear with me as you just listen to my voice as the Cardinals take on the Detroit Lions this weekend, Sun Devil Stadium. Definitely not Sun Devil Stadium. That hasn't been that in forever. It just tells you how old I am. But State Farm Stadium, Sunday afternoon, 1:25 p.m. Arizona time. The Lions come to town. Both teams are 1-1. The Lions coming off of a loss to the Bay Buccaneers. And let's kind of talk about that. We heard about Jeff Risdon brought me up, came on the show and talked with me about the Lions. So we learned a bit about them and what they do. What we do know is that they are a team that is expected to be one of the best in the NFL. They have Super Bowl aspirations. They feel they could have won the the championship game, conference championship last year against the 49ers, and things kind of fell apart. They had them, right where they wanted them. In the second half, things kind of fell apart. So what do we know about these Lions this year? We know that offensively, they can move the ball. In fact, right now they're second in the league in total yards, 413 yards per game. The problem is for them is they haven't been cashing those points in, those yards into points. They are only averaging points a game through 2 weeks. They do really well in the run game. They're averaging 151 yards per game in the run game so far this season. It's kind of they are just frankly a physical, tough team. And as we pull up some of the 2024 Lions, we can look at kind of what we've seen from their two-headed running back situation. They got David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Both of them so far have over 120 yards. Both averaging at least 4.5 yards a carry. David Montgomery averaging 4.5 yards a carry. He has 126 rushing yards and 2 scores. Jahmyr Gibbs has averaged 5.2 per carry for 124 yards and a touchdown. They've been used evenly in terms of the 2 games, 28 carries for Montgomery, 24 carries for Gibbs. And Jared Goff, though, who has been really good at taking care of the football the last couple of seasons. If we look at over the last couple of years, over the last 3 years, 12 picks, 7 picks, 8 picks. He's taking care of the football. Through 2 games, he has 3, and only 1 touchdown pass. He's not been nearly as impactful, and he has the highest sack percentage in the NFL right now at the best sack percentage. He's the least sacked quarterback in terms of dropbacks at 2.35% because they have 2 incredibly athletic and effective tackles in Penei Sewell on the right side of the offensive line and Taylor Decker on the left side of the offensive line. So this is going to be a different beast that the Cardinals face. What keys do we see from the Cardinals? Well, if we look statistically as well at what they've done so far, the Lions, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown in the passing game, one of the best receivers in the game, who's got 14 catches through 2 games, 132 yards. But it is their number 2 receiver who has emerged this season. He is Jamison Williams, former number 11 pick, really has emerged this year, and they've needed him, and he He's one of the NFL's leading receivers of yards with 200 yards. He kicked off the season with 5 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown against the Los Angeles Rams in that overtime win that they had in Week 1. And then St. Brown got tons of targets. He had 14 catches. He had 11 catches and 19 targets in Week 2 in their loss to the Buccaneers. But the problem for them has been that they've been bad in the red zone. They are 27% in red zone touchdowns. They've been doing good pretty much everything else, but they went 1 for 7 in the red zone last week. They had 2 turnovers. They had Jared Goff throw 2 interceptions. That was basically the difference in the game. They outgained the Buccaneers by like 250 yards. They moved the ball at will and just they couldn't come through. So we know a little bit about them. So what are some keys for the Cardinals to upset a team that hasn't been as good, that really kind of hasn't found their rhythm yet this season? And I think, number one, it's going to come down, they got to keep Aiden Hutchinson under control, and that's going to be especially difficult this weekend as final injury reports came out, and Kelvin Beachum, who is already the replacement right tackle for Jonah Williams, who is out an undetermined with a knee injury. Kelvin Beachum has a hamstring injury that had him limited in practice on Thursday. He did not practice at all on Friday, and he would be the guy that would primarily line up against Hutchinson. Now, they do move him around a little bit, but Hutchinson does line up on the defensive left side primarily, and he has 5.5 sacks through 2 weeks. An incredible number of, he's got 9 quarterback hits through 2 weeks, and I think Jeff Risdon on the show said something like 26 pressures in 2 weeks. He has been an absolute monster. And we could be looking at Jackson Barton starting at right tackle this weekend if Beachum is not able to go. I'm assuming if he's 75%, he'll still go, and they'll need to give him extra help. And so the Cardinals, number one, they're going to have to limit Aiden. Now, Aiden Hutchinson had said 4.5 sacks last week, and the Lions still lost. But what we know about the Cardinals and offensively is that if they get behind the sticks, it's hard for them to keep up with what they want to do. They're a team that needs to start fast, get a lead, and that way they can stay in their rhythm, stay kind of their offensive game plan. And Kyler Murray's playing at an extremely high level. But number one, we got to protect Kyler from Aiden Hutchinson. Number two, somehow they need to run the ball effectively against this Rams team. Now, statistically, in terms of defense, they haven't been, let's say, amazing, but they're good. They're third in the NFL right now in rushing yardage, allowing only 76.5 yards per game. They're only allowing 3.4 yards per attempt. That's number 3 in the league. And Risden gave me some stat that they are, I think, number 1 in yards per attempt with running backs. The one thing that they are susceptible to are quarterbacks taking off, and that perhaps what we will see this weekend then is a little more a few more designed runs, purposeful runs by Kyler Murray to get out in the open field and move this chains that way. But yeah, the Lions stopped the run extremely well. And then they've got Aiden Hutchinson in the pass rush, which then makes it very, very difficult. And so the Cardinals, and we've seen them run the ball well against pretty much anybody. And that includes last season when they were going up against number 1 defenses against the run. That said, we don't need them to rush for 200 yards. They just need to be consistently, run. They need to be able to run the ball so that the passing game can open up. I think this is a game where if the Cardinals are going to win, they're going to have to create at least one turnover, win their turnover battle, and that kind of goes without saying. And they're going to need, I think this might be, there's a matchup we're going to talk about in a little bit. But what they did last week to involve Harrison early on, they can't do what they did in week 1. They have to pressure the boundaries to spread things out to allow the Cardinals to run the ball without stacked boxes. Detroit doesn't necessarily need to stack the box because they're so physical up front. Defensively, they cannot. They've got to limit the run. They were so good last week with Kyren Williams allowing only 25 yards to him. James Cook had lots of running room in week 1. But what kind of run defense are the Cardinals going to be able to do when you have a team that has a two-headed monster of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery? David Montgomery is very, very tough. Jahmyr Gibbs, who is multifaceted. Because that's how they play off of that. Now, they can throw the ball. The passing game has not been in rhythm quite yet, even though they do have 3 very good pass catchers in Amon-Ra St. Brown, J-Mo, and a tight end Sam Laporta. This is just going to be one of those interesting games. The Cardinals have to score points. They're going to have to keep up, and they have to create a stop. Like, this is a game where they can't afford to get more than a score behind. They need to keep pace with the Lions to be able to do that. And this game Seth and I talked about on the review show earlier this week. This game kind of will tell us what the Cardinals are. Are they an almost team, like against the Bills where they built a league and then fell apart and couldn't stop Josh Allen? Are they better than advertised with that blowout win over the Rams? How they play a Lions team that is not happy where they're at, that's expected very good. If the Cardinals go toe-to-toe with them, even in a loss, we will still feel good about this team. If they're blown out, now we take a step back and go, okay, we're still where we thought we would be. Beat Washington next week, 2-2 in the first 4 games. You're still in a very good spot. But if the Cardinals can come out and win, if the Cardinals win, I think they'll start getting some attention. And not just a little attention, but a lot of attention. As it was, like Kyler Murray in his game last week, his MVP odds cut in half. He was plus 5,000 or his 50 to 1 entering the season. After his game last week, he's down to 25 to 1 to plus 2,500 on most sports books. That's a big jump. He's now like in the top 10 in terms of odds. He's got the same odds as Dak Prescott and somebody else. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. The offense has to continue to be good, because we can't expect the defense to do against the Lions what they did against the Rams, simply because, especially when we're talking the pass rush, they had 5 sacks last week. 4 of them by Dennis Gardeck and Zaven Collins. But we do have to understand and remember that the Rams were playing with a third-string left tackle. And the Cardinals did take care of business. Going against Penei Sewell at right tackle and Taylor Decker at left tackle is a different animal. Those guys are very good. And as I noted earlier, Jared Goff has the lowest sack percentage in the NFL at 2.35%. And that's critical stuff. They need that. In fact, in 2 games, he's been sacked twice. 1 sack per game. While the Cardinals, Kyler Murray has been sacked 5 times through 2 games so far this season. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more. Coming next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, this is our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's talk about the matchups that matter most, that I'm excited to see, what I'm going to be looking for, what I think will be kind of key. That's coming next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, best our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Looking at the Cardinals game against the Lions this week in Farm Stadium Sunday afternoon, week 3, both teams 1-1. Matchups that are going to matter. The one matchup we already talked about that I already mentioned that's going to matter is Kelvin Beachum or Jackson Barton against Aiden Hutchinson. That's going to matter a lot because, Paris Johnson is going to take care of business on the other side. And it would only make sense for the Lions to keep Hutchinson against a slightly tackle side. They're going to have Onwenu Urike on the other side. They're going to have Marcus Davenport on the other side. And we will see a little bit of one-on-one Aiden Hutchinson against Paris Johnson, I'm sure. A little bit. That said, if Hutchinson has a game that he had against Tampa Bay, that will absolutely break. That will be a game breaker for the they're trying to do. Yeah. The other one, which is this is a fun matchup that we're going to have to watch. And assuming he plays, Terrion Arnold for the Lions, currently questionable for the game, has been ill. He's been sick this week, but he's trending in the right direction according to Dan Campbell. The rookies, Marvin Harrison against Terrion Arnold, both those guys, that should be fun to watch. Young stars at their position. It'll be a difference-making. I don't know if it'll be a difference-making matchup, depending on how things go, unless if Marv does to Arnold what he did to Trey White last weekend, then that'll be fun. And as long as Kyler doesn't get picked off twice by Arnold on key throws, that's a different story. So that's something to watch. I think we have to pay attention as well, like for the Cardinals. It's going to be hard for the pass rush on the edge. So what we want to see is something more up the middle. Is Zaven Collins going to be able to do anything against Taylor Decker? What about Dennis Gardeck? Are they going to do anything at Penei Sewell? But they haven't been great on the interior, Jeff Risdon said. In fact, Frank Ragnow, who's one of the best centers in the league, has been underwhelming thus far. So let's pay attention to those interior guys, Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, LJ Collier, and how they pressure things up front in the run game and in dropbacks as well. And so that's another matchup that's going to be kind of key. Sam Laporta, well, I forget Amon-Ra St. Brown, so we've got big matchups on either side. So you've got Amon-Ra St. Sean Murphy Bunting, or perhaps Star Thomas or Max Melton, depending on how the playing time goes. Then you're going to see Sam Laporta. Okay, that you're going to watch Sam Laporta go up against the Cardinals linebackers and safeties. That'll be important as well. The running backs against the Cardinals linebackers, and it's gonna matter up front, but how many times are they going to be making plays at or around the line of scrimmage and not 4 yards down the field? Because if they're able to move the ball and get 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 4, things will be infinitely more difficult for the Cardinals to win. And we'll say this, that the Cardinals have been pretty good thus far at getting off the field on 3rd down. In fact, they've been really good on 3rd down this season. If we look at the Lions, they are 43% conversion rate offensively. The Cardinals in red zone, they are 58%, and their opponents right now are at 25%, 5 for 20. Although in the red zone, 5 of 9, 55, almost 56% are scoring touchdowns. They do have opponents have gone against them, gone for it on 4th down 5 times and converted 3 of them. The Cardinals have been great on 3rd down, both offensively and defensively this year, and so that's going to be kind of important to note. If we look at other matchups to kind of pay attention to, we're going to have to look at, so if Arnold's on the outside, what are we going to see for the other side of that? And that's going to be interesting because they have some players. Dinesh Rekestra is one of them that's been hurt, and they've got 2 pretty good cornerbacks in Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold. Watch Trey McBride. Those 2 corners, as Risdon said, are good man covers. They do have some trouble when they get into zone coverage. And so pay attention to Greg Dortch or Xavier Weaver. Dortch injured his hand and is questionable for the game. I would bet he'll probably play. And then pay attention to as well Trey McBride underneath making plays. You got two of the best young tight ends in the NFL going on right now in Sam Laporta and Trey McBride. And so that should be a lot of fun to see. There are other matchups that you're going to want to pay attention to. You should go Jared Goff against the Cardinals. Jared Goff is 8-0 in his last 8 starts against them. You remember that terrible, terrible game. So the first time the Cardinals faced Jared Goff was in Week 17. I think it was in 2017 and 2016. David Johnson got hurt that game. Jared Goff looked lost. He was sacked 7 times. He hasn't lost to the Cardinals since. He's 8-0 against them. He's thrown 14 touchdown passes, 3 touchdowns. He's rushed for 3 touchdowns as well. So he's accounted for 17 touchdowns in 8 games. And in those 8 games since the 7 sacks, he's only been sacked 11 times in 8 games since then. The Cardinals haven't beaten the Lions since 2015, and they haven't beaten Goff since 2016. So you've got a couple of monkeys that they could get off their back after they ended their home losing streak to the Rams last week. But Jared Goff rhythm really, really well against the Cardinals traditionally, and it's going to be interesting how they deploy things. But it does start with the run. So watch Kaiser White and Sam and Mac Wilson against David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Watch that matchup as well. And with that, coming in next on the Rise of Hero podcast, the best ever Cardinals talk on the web, we will go to the segment of the show. This is going a little more quickly as it's just me, but making predictions and talk some prop bets. That's coming in next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Red podcast, the best ever Cardinals talk on the web. It's on the final segment of the show where I make picks, predictions, and I talk some prop bets as well. And while Seth is not here, I do have some of his things. Let's talk outcomes. He thinks the Cardinals will go toe-to-toe with the Lions, and it'll be very, very close. He predicts a 28-27 Lions win. Obviously, with a 3-point spread, that would put the Cardinals at a Cardinals cover with that 3-point spread, and it would have the total going over the 50.5 that it's set at. But yeah, he has the Lions winning close game. I, on the other hand, think it will be a very competitive game, but I think it won't be nearly that close. And I've got them. I think I've got the Cardinals losing 30-24. It'll be a one-score game, but it won't be like within a field goal. And then let's look at some of the props now. Seth gets his from FanDuel, and I'm going to look at BetMGM for the ones that I'm looking at right now. But Seth likes 2 bets on Kyler Murray, and if you want to parlay them together, you can make a little bit more money. But he likes the passing total for the game for Kyler Murray, which is when he gave it to me, it was 264 passing yards was the line set. I wonder if he meant that to be Goff, because I know on BetMGM it's Goff at 264.5. And then, it's combined. So it's combined passing and rushing yards. That's what he meant to tell me. So combined rushing and passing yards, 264.5 at -114 odds. That's a pretty solid one. And then he goes with Jahmyr Gibbs with over 77.5 combined rushing and receiving yards at -14. Okay, those are basic props without any major value to them, but good. And then he has Trey McBride. He thinks McBride's going to have a big game, and I believe that there's a potential for that. And so he says ladder these 2 bets. Go with his receiving total of 53.5. Go with the over on that. And And here's the thing, actually, you can get that at minus 120. And FanDuel, it's minus 114 at 3.5, but you can get minus 120 at over 51.5 at BetMGM. And then you go alternate receiving yards. Seth says ladder the over 53.5 with 80-plus receiving yards at plus 275. That is a good value there. Because the ladder on BetMGM, it doesn't go to 80 yards, it does 75. And so you'd get the minus 120 of the over half, and then you get plus 185 on 75 plus yards. And those are his three main props to look at that he would like to see. Now, let's got to look at the kicking ones. There's not super value there, but you do get some plus odds on Matt Prater at plus 7.5 points. And so, do you think that the Cardinals, if the Cardinals go for 24 points, that wouldn't get there. So maybe you want to avoid that, because that 24 points would put them at 6 points made, because you have the field goal and 3 extra points. Now, if they go with the 27 points that Seth predicts, then that if you think it can go like that, then you go for that Prater bet at plus 110 for over 7.5, because that him at 3 touchdowns and 3 extra points and 2 field goals, which you get 9 points. Good stuff. That'll hit that there. If you look at the rushing yards, I'm having a hard time. Honestly, here's what I want to see. The rushing line for Kyler Murray is 34.5 at minus 150 on BetMGM. He's hit over 50 the last weeks. Okay, and Jeff Risdon told us that the Lions are susceptible to quarterback runs. So go for this ladder. You've got over 34.5 rushing yards at minus 115, and ladder that at 50 plus 225. And Kyler's gone for over 50 in the first 2 games of the season. I'm not super confident based on what we've seen from the Lions' run defense. I'm going to get from James Conner. And so I'm going to avoid that. In terms of receiving props, now I've been saying, Greg Dortch, hit Greg Dortch. Greg Dortch you won't find on here right now. He's questionable for the game. So what I do like is Trey McBride, especially if we think that he's going to have a good game. You've got even money odds, plus 100 at over 5.5 receptions. And you get the same thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know if that's what we're going to see. I don't know if both will do that, but I do like Trey McBride for this game to hit 6 receptions at least at plus 100 to do that. There's an interesting one here. Let's look at the touchdowns. And for looking anytime touchdowns, I don't like doing first touchdown scores. I mean, those are big ones. But yeah. And so you've got your basic ones. You got your basic ones, and these are easy money, like you say. James Conner, he's scored touchdowns in 7 straight games. You can make it 8 in a row. It's minus 120. That's not a special bet to make by any means. And the same thing goes for the Lions running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs at 25, David Montgomery at minus 115. But if you're looking for a value that you want to see, and if you cashed in on Elijah Higgins, Elijah Higgins is always going to be an interesting wild card because he can do things. He's got a little bit of tension, but Elijah Higgins plus 700 for anytime touchdown. And keep an eye. This is one to do only if Greg Dortch is out. So wait for inactives to come out. If Greg Dortch is inactive and Xavier Weaver is active. Right now, Xavier Weaver is plus 2,000 for an anytime touchdown, which would be because he would go into that slot role, and the way they use the slot receiver, that wouldn't be a bad choice to do there as well. If you look at Jared Goff, he's got 3 rushing touchdowns against the Cardinals. You could get him at plus 900. So those are kind of the ones that I like in terms of anytime touchdowns. You can get plus 130 for Marvin Harrison. I don't know, honestly, with what he scored the 2 touchdowns. They tried to go to him 2 other times at the end zone and didn't get him. So, plus 130 for that, not a bad deal. Definitely not a bad deal for that. And if we're looking on defensive props, they don't have, BetMGM doesn't have sack props, and so that's not nearly as fun. But on the Detroit side of things, tackles plus assists, Aiden Hutchinson plus 110 over 4.5. Remember, sacks count as tackles, so there's that. If we're looking at some value, okay, we're looking at some plus things. Mac Wilson over 4.5 is plus 105. That seems like it would be fairly easy to pull off. And if we kind of look at Mac Wilson's 2 games, he had in his game logs, so the last 2 games, his total tackles that he's had. He had 4 last week, so that would have missed, but he had 9 in the opener. And with a team that likes to run the ball as much as the Lions will, and probably will be on schedule, he will likely get some playing time as well. Although it'll be interesting to see how they deploy things. We'll probably see more base defense. Week against the Rams, the Cardinals' base defense was a nickel, but they kept their big lineman up front, and Kaiser White was the only inside backer on the field at the time. Other bets, so I like in terms of the defensive ones, you've got, again, Mac Wilson plus 105 to get over 4.5 total tackles and assists, so that's combined tackles. Aiden Hutchinson plus 110 for over 4.5 as well. Those are it. And Jeff Risdon in his prediction for the game had the Lions winning. I've got the Lions winning. Seth has the Lions winning. So we're not being super homery here. But here's the thing. If everyone's picking a team, doesn't that kind of bring some bad juju? And I'm all for that bad juju, because bad juju for everyone picking the Lions means the Cardinals win. So let's go for that. Next, we have our regular shows. I don't know if Howard's going to be doing any audio between now and then. He's got to get back into the groove of things. But that'll wrap up this edition of the Rise of C-Red podcast, special Cardinals Talking Web on the web, episode 592, solo show. Seth and I will be back next week as we talk about the Cardinals and the Lions and how they did. Hopefully it'll be a Cardinals win, or at least a very competitive win. And at minimum, don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. We don't want anybody getting hurt. And that wraps up that show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise Up Red C, be Red C-Red, and of course, Rise Up C-Red.
Rise!